Hello, everyone. This is Gregory Brennan with Virginia Clean Cities. I am the Sustainable Transportation and Infrastructure Manager here. Thank you so much for tuning in to this month's Technology Happy Hour with Sustainable Energy Strategies. Jill Hamilton, founder and president, is going to talk today about sustainable strategies and biofuels in the Mid Atlantic region. But before we do that, I would like to take a special time to highlight one of our good friends and empower charging partners. Today, we're highlighting an EV friendly workplace in Clifton Forge, Virginia. Chuck Unrow and Josh Taylor work to have EV chargers installed for the talent of Clifton Forge and for their customers and employees alike. And so a special thanks to the Empower team, the Rural Reimagine program, which is tough to say itself, and their in-house trained EVSE techs and electricians that helped get the EV chargers installed. So special thanks to the town of Clifton Forge. And with that, I will pass things over to Jill. But before I do, please, if you have any questions or want to know more about Virginia Clean Cities and how to become a partner or member, please reach out. Our contact information is below. All right, with that, I'll pass it over to you, Jill.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, Virginia Clean Cities, Greg, Matt, the whole Virginia Clean Cities team. Happy to be here. As you said, this is a technology happy hour, and I'm Jill Hamilton, President of Sustainable Energy Strategies. And this is my brief agenda, but I hope you all have your favorite beverage, as Greg said. I've got my mocktail of seltzer and raspberries, but hopefully you have something fun. I'm going to run through a lot of federal and state grant opportunities, ones that I think will be beneficial to biofuels, which is kind of my focus for this presentation and my overview. And I will give a little school bus scenario. If you were to buy 50 school buses, what would its greenhouse gas benefits be? And I am going to compare it to electric vehicles just because that seems to be the topic of choice these days. And then, of course, some Q&A. So a little bit about our team. I've been running this company for 28 years, hard to believe. We're key consultants to Clean Fuels Alliance America. We focus on business development. I'm proud to say that we've raised over $2 billion for alternative fuel and clean energy projects. And we've probably leveraged that about 4 times, so another $8 billion in private industry dollars. But most of our fundraising is in specializing in federal and state funding. Sometimes we do nonprofit funding, but most of it's in that federal and state space. Got a small office, a nice picture of our team, but we've added 2 since then. I just haven't taken a picture. And there's our SESI online website as well. I think most of you know what biofuels are, or renewable fuels. Biodiesel, renewable diesel, sustainable aviation fuel are all made from the same feedstocks, veg oils, and animal fats, but you could also throw in ethanol from corn, predominantly corn, and renewable propane, which I did not put a slide on those 2, but renewable propane is made from the renewable diesel process. And so it's a byproduct of that. So using those same feedstocks. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I think most people know what they are, but I'm happy to answer questions if you want to. And I've got Clean Fuels Alliance America is one of my core clients, and they've provided that slide as well as this one on the benefits. I say about 74% lower carbon emissions when on average. They've generalized it as 70 here, but biofuels generate about the biomass-based diesel fuels generate about 4.4 billion in economic impact, creating over 100,000 jobs. And growing. They're expecting the announcement tomorrow for the renewable fuel standard, which should probably increase that more than by at least 50%. So we're going to have a huge year this year. We're expecting to have a huge year with that announcement. We'll see where that goes tomorrow. But it also lowers prices at the pump. And what that means is if you were to take those biofuels away, you're going to have to pay more at the pump, just like we're seeing with the issue with the war in Iran, that the prices are jumping because of scarcity of fuel supply. So we do help to lower prices at the pump. It's also a health savings cost, and it's not a minor one. It's about 7.5 billion. Oops, didn't mean to go backwards there. So that's fairly significant as well. So these are the funding opportunities I'm going to talk about. It's just a quick list of them. I'm going to run through them fairly quickly. So if you have more questions or if any of these relate to you, let me know. But this is also a shout out to you, Virginia Clean Cities, that these are program areas that you guys may want to look at for your own coalitions. The HBIP, Higher Blend Infrastructure Incentive Program. My first BIP program or HBIP program was with Alan Harned at Virginia Clean Cities in 2015. So this has been around for a little while. The IRA funding gave it about $500 million to this program, and they are not going to spend all of that. They've allocated all, but some of those projects don't move forward. So they're looking at about $75 million to put back out in another solicitation. But having texted the program manager, Jeff Carpenter, he does not think that they're going to come out with one this year unless we see something unless there's a lot of pressure put on rural development. But he does think that there is funding available, and there's also $100 million potential in CCC funding. So we could see something as early as this fall. That's what I'm hopeful for, and we anybody continue ask for this, ask your legislatures for this, ask the DOE or USDA for this. Will help to bring that money out. If you were to apply, and if you're gearing up for this program, you could apply for up to $5 million, and then you have to match it with $5 million, unless you're a small retailer or designated as a home heating oil. And usually you're given about 36 months to do it, but I will tell you, after you submit, it usually takes anywhere from 6 months to a year to get that contract landed. And that's because there's some environmental paperwork to get done. So there's a bit to do there. So who can apply for this program? The owner of transportation fueling facilities, those are your fleets and your retailers. And then owner of fuel distribution facilities. Fuel distribution facilities are your middle marketers, your terminaling companies, your pipeline companies, and sometimes it's your biodiesel plants themselves, as well as home heating oil distributors. You do want to try to fall under that category if at all you can, because you are not capped on what you can spend it on. The transportation fueling facilities, they have some limitations on the tanks and dispensers, but not the fuel distribution facilities. And your home heating oils will fall under that fuel distribution facility. So there you go. Very quickly, this is a shout out to any federal grants you want to apply. You need to get a sam.gov if you want to apply for federal funding. If you're going to go after HBIP, you also need an e-authentication account. And I do provide the link in here as well later on. But these are some of the things you'd need to do to prepare for that. Now moving on to the Rural Energy for America program, or REAP. This is for agricultural producers and rural small businesses. I know Virginia has a lot of rural areas, and I know we're focusing more on looking at those. This is a great program for renewable energy system installations or energy efficiency upgrades. It can also provide loan guarantees that cover up to 75% of the costs, up to 25 million. So I've had a couple different applicants in this area, including a biodiesel plant in Virginia. Unfortunately, that biodiesel plant is not operating right now due to the lack of tax credits, but that's no longer an issue. We should have tax credits in play for another 4 years. So the grants, if you're not going after a loan guarantee, can cover up to 40% of the eligible project costs, up to 500,000 or $500,000 for energy efficiency projects, or $1 million for renewable energy systems. Now, again, this is for small businesses and in rural communities and ag producers. So what are some of these energy efficiency improvements? I've had biodiesel plants use it for new boilers, new heating and ventilation and lighting, refrigeration, commercial kitchens, food prep. It's open to pretty much any business. So I think we have a lot of businesses in rural communities that could really benefit from this. Predominantly this program has been used for solar arrays, but it could be done for biodiesel production as well, or any liquid renewable program, geothermal, hydro, a lot of different things. So moving on to the clean diesel program. Oops, there's somebody waiting. Can I admit them? So the clean diesel program in Virginia, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but I think you all have a state program that allocates it to school buses, particularly propane and maybe electric, right? Yeah,
That's
but
cool.
yeah, but there is a national program. Typically has about 60 million. I'm not sure where it is. They do have an allocation. They do have a budget. They just have to get this money out. And usually it goes in every other year. At least the last few 5, 6 years, they've done it every other year. So I'm hopeful that this is the year they're going to come out with the national program. And this is the program in which we've been highly successful. Every application has been awarded under it for biodiesel when we submitted. But as it stands in the past, you had to apply it to older vehicles, and that they're becoming harder and harder to find. But there are some still out there, but you also have to show that they have a useful life. So, and that's a little harder. On the right is some examples of some of the awards that we've won, and we are still implementing some of the 2022 and 2024 projects. So how can we use them? The nice thing about DIRA is it's very flexible. It's for any vehicle that's class 5 and through 8, but you have to, most of those vehicles that they're targeting are 7,000 miles a year or more, which is harder and harder for older vehicles. But you can pool vehicles. I've had as many as 3 vehicles retired for 1 vehicle replaced. So there are some creative ways to get around that mileage requirement. Also under the heavy duty category, it can be for on-road, off-road, school buses, locomotives, marine, just about any kind of heavy duty vehicle. So I wouldn't, as long as it's related to transportation, I think you're good. You can also marry it with some Volkswagen money. I don't know if that's the case in Virginia, but how you're using your Volkswagen money. But if you wanted to do an electric project, you could do that. So MIRAD, most of you folks may not be familiar with this program. I've done several of these grants, but I don't know that the Virginia Clean Cities and its members have. It's Port Infrastructure Development Program. They just announced today that it's going to be closing. They just extended it, and they're closing it June 26th. That's almost 3 months to get this application in. A small port project is 11.25 million and smaller. So that's fairly significant. But that the higher they have about, I think it's over 500 million for this program. I think it's 588 million. That's not a lot of money to do port projects. The interesting thing about this is our industry members can't apply directly. They have to go through state or a government entity. State, local government, quasi-government. So think about a metropolitan planning organization or maybe a bank or the green banks or an economic development organization. I've worked with all of them to apply for this funding. You can do port electrification, but you can also, and I haven't looked at the new solicitation that came out today to see how they've changed it, but in the past it could do electrification and grid upgrades, microgrid upgrades at ports. But some of my clients have used it to do new docks that are fairly expensive, or cranes, or even facility improvements. But energy related storage, all of that can apply under this program if you can argue that it's going to impact goods movement in the region and any kind of cargo. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I did provide the link in here if you want to check that out. It's a live link, so I may have to edit that before sending it to Greg to make sure I have the written one in there. Okay, moving on to the Clean School Bus Program. There's a solicitation for information out right now, a request for information that closes April 6th. So you have a few more days to submit comments. I provided the link in there. And then once they've reviewed those comments, they're going to come out with a solicitation. So what is interesting about this request for information is they would like to expand it to include other fuels, and particularly biodiesel or biofuels. EPA has had several meetings with us to talk about how to, what does that look like? What do we need to do that? This administration is very supportive of biofuels. And so this is an opportunity for Virginia Clean Cities and its members. You do have to argue that there are lower emissions, and I'm happy to give you a sample letter if that's of interest on B100. And I'm going to go over another scenario about clean school buses in a minute. So we'll get into that in a minute. So Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvement, or CRISI as it's known. This program usually is annual. They didn't come out with one last year, so I'm expecting them to come out with one this year. It's closed at the moment, but most people that are working in rail expect this to come out. And it's for capital improvement projects. And so why do we care? Well, rail is a growing area for biofuels, and they don't have a lot of the fueling infrastructure they need to operate their or fuel on their rail on it. But I've also seen them do rail expansion, additional rail infrastructure, storage, and other things. So there's a lot of different ways they can use this if they can argue it's safety, and air quality is one of those areas that you can argue is a safety improvement. And that's, I don't remember how much, but it's usually over $1 billion. So it's fairly significant as well. The Airport Improvement Program. Again, this is an area I'm trying to get coalitions more involved in. This is an annual program. So there's annual funding through Federal Aviation Administration. And these grants cover up to 75% of the costs of planning, safety improvements, airport layouts, runways, airfield safety investments, etc. But mostly it's for planning and environmental studies. So how does that impact us? Well, we can't use this for CapEx projects, but you can't, if you don't have an airport improvement program that includes the alternative fuels, it's hard to invest in them or get the airports to invest in them. In Maryland, there's over 40 airports in that small state. I don't know how many in Virginia, but I'm guessing it's more than 40. So that's significant. It's a good target for Virginia Clean Cities. So once you do your plan, then you can use this VAIL program to do your CapEx projects. And again, it pays for 75%, 90% for smaller airports, and most of them are small airports. And this can include biofuels, include electric and anything else for that matter. But we're seeing airports look at it for biodiesel for their heating systems. Most of them are on boilers. Excuse me, I'm going to have a drink of my fun drink while I'm coughing here. Excuse me. Okay. So again, this comes out, pre-application deadline is November 1st of each year. I think they award it in January, somewhere along those lines. So if you're thinking about this is a perfect time to start planning for this type of a grant program. And I've included, again, the link in here on that. All right, so this is your reminder. I'm coming to the end of my federal grant slides. Please register with grants.gov. You can monitor what grants are available. You may have to have a login.gov account, which is a personal account assigned only to you. They're going to ask you very personal information to do that, like where have you lived, what are recent credit card purchases. It's kind of scary, but they do ask all that kind of stuff to verify that you are you and that we're not getting a bot in the grant system. Then you need to register with sam.gov, and here's the link. And again, if you're going to go after that USDA funding and be ready for it, you may need an EOTH account. Moving on to state funding, nice picture there of Richmond. These are the grants I'm going to go over for the state. Okay, I mentioned the federal ports. You can leverage that federal port project funding with Virginia port project funding, or just go after Virginia. It's up to you on what you, or if you can't get the federal funding, this is a great option for you. There are a couple different programs. I'm not going to go over all of them. You can look into them, but the Port of Virginia Economic Infrastructure Development, or EID, is for new job creation. If you're arguing that you're expanding a facility in Virginia and you're creating at least 25 new jobs, then they might invest. And this is good for, let's say we had an electric, either biodiesel or an electric vehicle manufacturer in Virginia. We need to get that product out. That's a good place for this, for building out a dock or a facility at a port. The port volume increase, this is for ag entities or manufacturing related to minerals, gas, and anything really manufacturing related, but energy is one of them. So they're looking to increase containers So 40 to 50-foot containers, and the pre-applications due September 1st or October 31st of each year. So it's an annual program, and then the application window begins January 1st to 31st. So we've just missed it. We are about to just miss it. And those costs are capped at 250,000 a year. But again, oftentimes I've had clients use portions of it one year and portions of it another year. So you can kind of stagger how you do some of these. There's also the International Trade Facility Grant. That's so think about your ag exports, barge and rail infrastructure. I didn't go into those, but there are some other ones. Speaking of rail, there are 3 rail grant programs. Most of them are, I think they're all annual. The latter 2, the Merit and the RPF, are due December. Their applications are due between December 1st and February 1st of each year. So we've kind of just missed that, but know that it's an annual program that you can work toward. And then the industrial rail access, I think you can apply throughout the year, and there's about 4 million available, and grants are capped at $1 million. So they're not funding a lot, but again, this is a great way to integrate biofuels or your technology with rail industry. I'm not going to go over all the nuances but most of those are CapEx. The Virginia Transportation Partnership Opportunity Fund, that's a mouthful and the acronym's not any better. This is for local governments to do studies. So think about transportation studies. If you are working with a local government that you want them to study, let's say we want to think about adding biofuels and we need to know where to put that infrastructure. This is a great way to get that study done, and the environmental analysis, the capacity development, how does it impact the region, all that good stuff. This is an opportunity for you. This one isn't so much biofuel related, but we may look at it to do for generators. But Virginia Power Innovation Program is really for energy innovation, but mostly it's going towards electric energy storage, the Nuclear Innovation Hub, anything that's going to create jobs. And I think they have 2.5 million available. I don't know if that's all still available, but awards are between $100,000 and $2 million. So that's fairly significant range there. The Clean Energy Innovation Bank is our green bank. I don't know if Virginia Clean Cities has participated in any of these in the past, but it's a great way to get a low interest loan to fund your clean energy project and pay for infrastructure development, as well as grid and hydrogen, even carbon storage facilities. You can do a lot in there, and solar, but so energy, if you want to offset, anyway, this is a great opportunity for a low interest loan. The Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. This, I believe, is an annual program. It's in its 4th round right now, and grants are capped at about 200,000 per locality. That's a nice way to marry maybe your rural REAP grant with a state funding. So you could even get more funding for the same project. It does pay for efficiency retrofits, but it also pays for audits, audit training, educational programs. Maybe Virginia Clean Cities could even participate in this. So take a look at that. All right, so I mentioned that I'm going to give you a clean school bus program. I'd love to see you guys participate in the clean school bus program. We are expecting that $2 billion to be opened up to biofuels. At least that's the intent of EPA. And so we did a scenario for Maryland, and I'm going to throw it at you because I haven't had a chance to run one for Virginia, but you'll get the same idea. So in Maryland's case, they have a zero emission vehicle law that they have to comply with. I'm not going to go over all those specifics, and they have some grant programs, but so basically there's some costs to them and grid impacts that we capitalized on here. We're trying to understand what those costs are, and basically prices rose 5% in 1 year. And they're expected to raise another 13% between 24 and 25. I think that's what it was. So that's fairly significant energy cost increases. Most of that's due to data centers and added taxation of the grid, but electric vehicles really aren't yet adding a lot of pressure. But if we change what we're doing, then we can, meaning if we add a lot more electric vehicles, we can't expect that there's going to be an impact to the price of utilities costs. I'm not going to go into that, but okay. So I'm throwing out to you as an option B100. A lot of folks may not be familiar with B100. It's 100% biodiesel use in diesel engines. So it's an upfitting, if you will, that costs about $35,000 per bus today. And based on the AFDC, it delivers about 47% lower life cycle greenhouse gas emissions compared to petroleum. And that's in the full life cycle. There have been a lot of these deployed in our region. PepsiCo's using them in, I think, Wytheville. I can't remember the actual town in Virginia. But then we have about nearly 200 of these operating in the DC metro, DMV metro area, with DC Water, DPW, Prince George's County, and others are using this B100 technology. But if we're going to get this funding through the Clean School Bus Program, we want you to understand some of the math. So here's some of the assumptions. If over the lifetime of a bus, it runs about 500,000 miles, one bus will burn about nearly 76,000 gallons of diesel fuel or biodiesel. And on diesel, it'll generate about 774, almost 775 metric tons of CO2. B100 avoids about 576.2 metric tons per bus immediately. Well, I should say that's not immediately, but it starts getting carbon reduction, emissions reductions as soon as you add it to the fleet. So I've given you a couple scenarios here. The first one is if we were to replace new buses, 50 new buses with either diesel fuel and B100, I should say diesel engines and B100, or electric. And what the scenarios are that we have included here is the base cost of the vehicle, the conversion costs or upfitting costs for biodiesel, or the charger costs for the electric upgrade. The utility upgrades, there are none for B100, but there are for electric in most cases, or many cases, especially for a school bus fleet. Planning and charger maintenance, there isn't anything for biodiesel. There is for electric. That could be argued, but this is the assumptions that we're using here. And I will say these charger costs are very low estimates out of it. NREL now, National Rocky Mountain Lab, or whatever, Rocky Lab, whatever they're called. These are very conservative. They're not aggressive estimates. I would argue they're more expensive than that. And then lifetime energy costs. And these are assuming, I think they're 2024 data. So we're already seeing that a 13% increase on that already. But the lifetime fuel costs. So what does that mean? In essence, 24.5 million for diesel and 29 million for electric. That results in about $4.5 million or 18.2% benefit to do B100 over new electric buses. Now, if you get a lot of grants for your electric buses, then this may be a moot point, but I think we're going to see that 1.5 million be paid for out of the Clean School Bus Program, right? That's what we're talking about. The second scenario is looking at just using retrofits to existing buses, and we're going to put some caveats that they're new buses. They're fairly new buses, right? That they're going to have at least 10 years of life. And most buses are now being used over 15 years, 12 to 15 years on average. So 10 years would not be unrealistic to find. So your base cost of your vehicle, there are none because you've already bought them for biodiesel, but you would have your base cost for your electric because those are new vehicles. Conversion costs are still at 1.5 million, 1.75 million, and your fuel costs are the same. So you're looking at 12.75 million. Electric purchase, you're still at that 29.06. So in this case scenario, you're looking at a 12.32 million benefit by using B100, or a 76% benefit overall. So the bottom line on this, why do we care? Well, it's going to cost you less to decarbonize using B100 than doing electric. And that's what we're trying to advocate for, or help you understand that with the B100 retrofit option, you're at 12.6 times more cost per ton with electric than with the B100. And that's using Maryland grid emissions data, but it might be different in Virginia. I don't know the different scenarios. Actually, I think Virginia is providing Maryland with a lot of its extra power that they need. The overall district costs, electric buses are 7.3% more expensive per ton under scenario A, and 56.6% more expensive than under scenario B. The only reason we're showing you this is so that you have an alternative to understanding what some of the costs are. Now, I know Virginia Clean Cities is very fuel neutral, and I'm sure they've had some electric vehicle folks in here to give you a different perspective. The key takeaway here is that B100 can be a cost-effective bridge in moving towards your zero-emission technology, especially as these technologies are evolving. And I think that's it. Thank you for having me. And there's my contact information if you want to reach out.
If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching the entire webinar. If you'd like to know more about Virginia Clean Cities, please reach out. As I said, my name is Gregory Brennan and my contact information is below. If you'd like to reach out to Jill, her contact information is also below. Please feel free to reach out with any questions you might have, and we look forward to hearing from you, and have a great rest of your day.